The historical Black Police Precinct, Courthouse, and Museum in Overtown, Miami. Founded in 1950 as both a police station and municipal court for African American officers and residents under Jim Crow segregation. This building is unique, not only in Miami but across the entire U.S., as the only known structure designed specifically to house a separate precinct and courthouse for Black law enforcement and judicial services. Today, the building serves as a museum dedicated to preserving the stories of those who served within its walls, preserving artifacts, archival images, oral histories, and personal narratives from the 1940s to the 1960s. It stands as a powerful testament to resilience and community during a pivotal era in Miami's history. Join us in this intimate conversation with the Executive Director, Terrance Cribbs-Lorrant.
Hello and welcome to Love Speaks. I'm your host, Francois. I do this alongside my lovely wife, Lakeisha. Love speaks what love is, whether it is spiritually, currently, or culturally. Here on this podcast, we like to talk to individuals who have a strong love and a passion for whatever they're a part of and what they do. Hence, Love Speaks. I'm in school, and while in school, majoring in government, I have done a lot of research concerning Miami. One of the things I come to realize is that one particular culture or ethnic background is receiving a lot of credit for quote unquote building Miami. And one of the things that I know for sure is that particularly the African American community, the Bahamian community, the Haitian community, even the Jamaican community, all a part of our Black ancestors or people, we have done a lot to build things in Miami, Florida. I can recall my great grandmother being an entrepreneur and owning a store, a grocery store, doing things. My wife can also recall some of her family members who actually own things. As we enter this time of a lot of gentrification taking place, I'm noticing we're losing a lot of our history as African Americans or Blacks or Bahamians or Haitians. A lot of the areas in South Florida are being regentrified. We're losing culture. But I am extremely grateful that in spite of what has lost, there are some things that remain. There are some things that remain. We are on location at one of the only, not one of, the only one of its kind in the entire nation. I am here, and I'm going to let my guest introduce himself, but at the only Black police museum and courthouse. Please help me welcome my guest, Mr. Terrance Cribbs.
Thank you. That was good. That was really good.
Thank you so much. Now, you are the executive director?
Yeah, I'm the executive director and cultural curator here at the City of Miami Black Police Precinct and Courthouse Museum. And it is, you're right, the only one in the nation.
What's the history of this building, this location, and the work that it has done?
So this institution was established, it goes actually as far back as promises that were not kept. There was a desire for those whites who had come down, many of them had come down for the northern area, working on the railroad, Henry Flagler we might know about. And they came down, they decided they wanted to incorporate the city, but there weren't enough white men who cared enough to incorporate the city. And so the few white men that were around that were interested in it decided they were going to go to the Black community at that time So we're looking at around the 1800s, so the late 1800s. Blacks did not have the right to vote. And so they said, listen, we will give you the right to vote if you would vote for the city to become chartered as the city of Miami. And so you will see the first 163, I think it's 63 or 62, signees on the charter for the city of Miami are black. So that was a promise that we would charter if you give us the vote. And there were another layer of amenities that they would do for blacks, because these blacks had, desires too. And one of them was to have equal justice under the law. At that time, we were living under the Jim Crow laws. Well, by that time, so by 1896, the city was chartered and they didn't keep their promise. And so we didn't see actual law enforcement or blacks in uniforms until 1944. And that's when we see what you'll see in this institution as what we call the first five. So most people like to associate the first five with, the first five on the basketball team. So they're pretty much like the first five on the court. And they were joined by 1950 with Judge Lawson Thomas, who was the first black judge in Miami.
Wow.
Not the South, because there was a judge in Key West who was disbarred, but Judge Lawson was the first in Miami who was appointed. So he was appointed at that time.
Wow. And so our history cannot be erased. It cannot. We have to, one of the things I just firmly believe is that we embrace our history. We don't try to erase it because it all wasn't as pleasing. And so as you stated, that it is amazing to me how black people have been used over the years within our government, where we won't give you the right to vote necessarily, but then we'll give you the right to vote if it's beneficial toward us.
I mean, I think that's been government overall. That's anybody that's in leadership that wants to remain in power. And so, but I'm appreciative also of those that choose not to be settled in this and get out here and what we call campaign against these erasures of history and making sure that our history is remembered and practiced, right? History is actually something you must practice. You must practice and learn from it. So they say history repeats itself, and typically when they use that phrase, they're referring to somewhat of the negative that's associated to it. And I always say that history repeats itself only under the conditions that you don't learn from it. And so it is imperative that we learn from the things that, as a people, as a humanity, that we did right and things that we didn't do right, so that we don't end up repeating them. Unfortunately, because of the lack of knowledge and because of the lack of awareness around history and what has been done, a lot of things get repeated or a lot of things get drawn out. Or people assume that they are the ones that invented it. And they weren't. It was already here. Somebody set a foundation, and more than likely that foundation was set by blacks and the natives that were here.
Absolutely. And I 1000% agree with you. And this building, this place, is a prime example of things that were done right.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that it has been a fight to keep it. It was not the initial intent to preserve this building, but due to activism of those retired law enforcement officers in 2000 and 2001, one of which just happens to be Dr. Ingram. Bob Ingram, George, Ingram. So Dr. Ingram was someone who was a law enforcement officer. He also went on to become the mayor of Opelika.
Absolutely.
He was a school board member, but he was a trailblazer in the context that the current city of Miami police patch that they wear today, he designed in 1961. Although he wasn't given credit, his white supervisor took credit. But because he kept his draft and other black officers saw him doing the sketch and was willing to speak up and speak out, it was back bestowed on him that he was the one that designed the patch that the current city of Miami, the emblem and the logo that the city of Miami law enforcement officers use today. So they fought to preserve the building along with Arthur Teal. Yes. So Arthur Teal was as commissioner at that time. And so when these group of retired law enforcement officers came into this meeting wanting to preserve the building, in fact, they had already given the building away to be slated, turned into a parking lot. So what you're sitting in, and this is always a part of what I say when I experience tours, I like to tell them where you are standing may not have existed had it not been for people having the audacity and the courage to demand that it be saved. And so, and it was relationships, right? There was a relationship that Arthur Teal had to have had with Dr. Ingram prior to that helped him to, when he saw Dr. Ingram walk in and said, "Hey, are these guys with you?" And he said, "Yes, they're with me, and we are here to make sure that this building is protected." But again, it took them being the audacity, courage, and the tenacity to go before and say, "Hey, this is what we want to do."
I commend you for helping to preserve the legacy that so many fought for. The names that I remember the Teal. And I remember, I want to say my oldest brother still has a proclamation that came from Teal in those days. I remember Mayor Ingram being the mayor of Opelika growing up, which shows the fight continues.
Yes, it does. Yeah, and I think it's generational because I struggle, quite honest, I struggle with the idea that we've lost so many that have fought for equal rights and equity in all areas of our life, and I'm still doing the same thing, yes. Right? And so it's almost harmful for me to believe or to think that I would be passing along this same responsibility to the next generation, your children, right? So it dare to ask the question, what did Dr. King get assassinated for? What did Malcolm X? What did, Marcus Garvey? What did these people do? What did, Shirley Chisholm and, Mahalia Jackson and, Fannie Lou Hamer, what did they do, all of what they done? What was it for? If we're still having to deal with the same situations, just in a different year.
Absolutely.
Just in a different time. So I say that we must continue to remind the next generation that we're only passing the baton. We're in a relay race.
Yes.
And I believe that relay race is for a lifetime. There's just this human almost cloud of concern over the people. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to keep doing your part and making sure you realize that every part that you put in does matter. Every vote that you make does matter, right? Every word, everywhere you decide to position your time and energy, it does matter. Lieutenant Otis Davis was the one who said, "Hey, listen, I like to see this building become a museum." And so there was this direct interest of preserving and protecting the historical documents and getting people to donate. So there was a lot of volunteer. All of those men that I mentioned and more volunteered a lot of hours in order to keep the doors open, to then do some of the work that we needed, like the paint, What you're seeing in this space now with even the frames, if you look closely, a lot of the pictures were not framed. They had nailed them to the wall. And so, putting frames, making it look, buying cases, and offering safe space for storytelling, right, could happen. And so we're in a very strong plea to the community, because 1944 wasn't that long ago. And so we know there are still a lot of people who are alive. Unfortunately, Overtown suffered a catastrophe under urban renewal.
Absolutely.
And so they brought this highway, which is the 95 and the 395, right through this neighborhood and decimated over 40,000 relocated family members. And so a lot of the Overtown community, or what was known as the Harlem of the South, we're asking them to share their stories. What was it like to have black officers, people who look like you, patrolling and protecting your community?
Yes.
Right? Seeing people as people. Right behind us, directly right behind us. So they were smart enough to say, okay, we're going to let you all become patrolmen, not police officers, because we don't want you to be called police officers. We're not going to pay you the same amount. We're going to give you less than the white folk officers, and you can't arrest whites, right, unless you see them do the crime in front of you. If there was a suspicion of a white person engaging in a crime, they had to call for a white officer to come and detain that person. Oftentimes that white person would just leave. And so they gave them bikes. So they didn't even receive cars. And so they would have to put their suspects on the handlebars and ride them into here.
Wow.
Now, the Negro District also spanned all the way to Coconut Grove. So there was Coconut Grove all the way up to the Liberty, Brownsville area. But they would, that and hike or hitch rides to bring blacks into this precinct if they were being arrested. So we're have a call out for people to come and share what that looked like. What did that feel like? We have an idea,
exactly.
Right? We have documents that say crime decreased 200% in the Negro community when they hired these black officers. There were a lot of reasons why I still believe in this institution, and why I put so much effort and energy and time into this institution. I was brought in 2017, and since I've been here, we've done our very best to bring on board new staff members. We call them team members. To build out our social media, so you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook. So we've done because the work that we do here, you won't know what's being done if you don't see it. And the way people see and experience their news is through social media.
You're absolutely right. Because for the longest, I didn't know as much about this place. When I drive on I-95, I can see, but it's like, is it a operational building, or is that just something that's is it a name tag? And so to know that this place is here, that really means a lot. So if you know about this stuff, contact this well-educated individual, the first director. We have a generation now who it's like, that's a long time ago, it doesn't matter, and they don't understand history. Like you said, it's repeating itself. So what do we need to do to create this hunger for this next generation?
Making it relevant is key, and we've done that by making sure the community knows about the different laws. So we have this project that I implemented when I got here called Knowing the Law. Awareness plus education equals smarter choices.
Say that again.
Awareness plus education equals smarter choices. And that's our knowing the law. And knowing the law gives information about laws that are breaking, coming out, and getting rid of the jargon and really giving you the meat and potatoes of what that law and how it will impact the way you live, work, and play inside the community. So we want people to enjoy coming to Miami. We don't want you to come to Miami and get a record. The other thing that we want to use this space for right now, it's very contentious. It's very bad. environment where it comes to law enforcement. And people are forgetting that the men and women in those uniforms are human beings. They must go back home to their families. They have families. They're doing a job. And yes, there are some that have been deemed bad apples. And yes, there are those that don't need to be silent around those bad apples. And we need to be very intentional about helping our young children, especially, know how to interact with these law enforcement officers. And that's what my hope is, by elevating. So what do you do when you get stopped by the cops? What do you do if you feel like you're being unjustly treated? There are steps and ways to that. These things are not being taught in the classrooms anymore.
And it's necessary to be on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
To understand that we need our police officers. Our police officers, all of them aren't bad. Until this very day, all of them aren't bad. Mm-hmm. We have to respect their role to protect and serve. And that's one of the reasons why this place exists.
Yes.
To create that level of balance, especially for our culture. Mm-hmm. So now there's this thing of profanity law.
There are a number of laws that were heard in the courtroom of Judge Lawson Thomas. All of them fell underneath what was known as misdemeanors, one of which just so happened to be profanity. And profanity was against the law. So there were a number of things like profanity. I will tell you that in doing the research and digging, we do shout out to the Miami Times, because a lot of the way we are able to see this history and talk about this history that happened in the courtroom particularly was because of a Miami Times reporter, Pius, who was assigned to the courtroom, and he created this column he called the Good Morning Judge column. That column literally gave us like a chronicle of cases that were heard in that courtroom. And the cases that were heard in that courtroom, we were able to go back into the archives of the Miami Times and pull them out. And what we discovered is even Judge Thomas and Judge Johnson would give unjust or unfair amounts of penalties to women. So we still saw a injustice occurring even within our community. And I think that's important for me to say, because I feel like sometimes we believe if Black people get the power, then we will still do right by all people. And we got to know we're talking about humans.
Absolutely. And
humans tend to want to gravitate to who has the power and how that power is being used. So we were able to uncover that. And that's something to be said. Women still were the last to get the right to vote. Women still don't have equal pay in many cases. You, even in this corridor or this roll call area, you will not see any women on the pictures, because women did not come into law enforcement or be allowed to become law enforcement officers until later on, after the 1960s. So,
and it's amazing that you say that, because even in our current climate, just a little while ago, I'm watching from afar how one of the African American women, I believe captains or chiefs, chief is under scrutiny.
Yeah.
In a majority African American city for being discriminatory. Yeah. And it's amazing that after all this time passed, we still have a fight within law enforcement. We have to protect our law officers who are supposed to, in return, protect us.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see how far we've come, but yet still
how far we must continue to travel.
How far we must go.
Yeah, we're still crossing that Selma Bridge. Mm-hmm. I think Brother John Lewis, When he talked about good trouble, I feel like that was equivalent to the Sermon on the Mount.
Yes.
That was equivalent to I Have a Dream. That's equivalent to Malcolm X, the moments of Malcolm X. That good trouble we have to continue to get in.
Yes.
Right? Because we know it's the human nature to try and overturn and overthrow and insert beliefs and ideas. And, we weren't all born and raised by the same mom and dad.
Absolutely.
And so some people, cultures, do believe that women do not belong in certain positions. And that will show up in various ways. The biases that we carry, we don't always know them, which is why one of the other programs that I made sure that I implemented when I came to this role was to outline what implicit biases are. The unconscious, things that we don't know that are sitting in us and how we respond unconsciously. And not just from a police practice, but even medical doctors need to go through certain training around their biases about how they feel Black people can handle more pain, right? Black people, how they treat Black people may not be the same way they treat, other cultures. And so we address those implicit biases with the community. We want the community to know you have a bias against law enforcement. You have a bias. And so that's what happens. That chief of police, I know her personally. And I sent her my support. And so, this gives us a way to elevate. We know, we just had a situation that's going all around the internet right now with a law enforcement officer punching a Black boy in the face, and that department, and a Black chief coming out and saying, we're going to look at all the footage that we have. We're going to look at everything. But I think we always need to remember this. You're dealing with humans. Yes. And although you're trained to do the right thing, although you're trained to say the right things, in that humanist moment and that adrenaline and knowing that you have the power to do whatever you want to do with little repercussion, it's always going to be somebody that's going to act out of that. Mm-hmm. And not remember that training. We're not dealing with robots.
Absolutely.
And maybe we will be eventually. Maybe all law enforcement officers will turn into robots. And then we'll have to worry about who's the programmer.
Absolutely.
Which AI system are they using?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's going to be the relevancy of this institution, I think, for the next. If you had to ask me, what is the next generation's responsibility? Turning this institution into a AI-generated or technology-advanced way of disseminating this history and ensuring it applies to that generation.
This is a magnificent facility, very magnificent facility. I encourage all of every ethnicity to understand this place, to visit this place, the tours of this place.
$5. $5 for kids.
That's not bad.
$5 for kids, $10 for adults, $5 for senior citizens. And we do Tuesday through Saturday from 10:30 until 3:30 is our last guided tour. And that's what we give you a guided tour, and the guided tours outside of myself and a couple of the other civilians. 90% of all the guided tours, if you walk in, are being conducted by either retired officers or reserve officers. So that means you get an opportunity to be one-on-one with an officer and ask questions. And that's the reason why we do it, because we believe they should be the ones taking you through the journey of this history.
Exactly. So that's not bad. Any other museum in the city is going to cost you way more, and does not have the same amount of weight and history that this has. So now I do have this great backdrop right here. We have this great backdrop.
You all picked this backdrop. This was not my choice. I wanted to put us in the courtroom. This part of the space. So we do feature the bike, which again, they were not immediately given cars, so they had to ride bikes, and their suspects on the handlebars. The memorial here is of officers who died in the line of duty. And a lot of them, transitioned because they weren't properly trained. Although they had to have more criteria and credentials than their white counterparts,
Exactly.
they still didn't have the street training that was needed or the equipment that was provided to the white officers. And so because they weren't allowed to go to the academy, we didn't see the first black officer go to the academy until 1960. 3 went, 1 finished, and that officer eventually rose to become the first black chief of City of Miami, which was Chief Clarence Dixon, which was in 1985. So unfortunately, many of these officers did perish doing the job that they had signed up for. What I like to highlight about this is, especially with youth that come, when we talk about black on black crime and where that phrase came out of, you have to remember that blacks were only relegated to live within certain communities. So if you have beef or you have disagreement with somebody, it's more than likely going to be the person that's within close proximity to you, which are blacks. And they labeled that black on black crime in order to heighten a hate for a group of people. You had white people murdering in their communities, Asian people, Jewish people, but they never called Jewish on Jewish crime.
Exactly.
So they do these things in order to label, in order to categorize, or to create a stereotype that presents a group of people in a harmful way. And they, if I can create this narrative, then it's going to make people fear you.
Absolutely.
And then I can create laws to protect those people who fear you, right? I can create these new laws. So then I can create laws like the urban renewal law, and I can create the war on drugs,
Exactly.
right? That really destroyed the black community and put a lot of black men and women behind bars for unviolent crimes. And so that's what I see this institution
Exactly.
as all doing. It's just really bringing all those things and debunking the stereotypes and the narratives. But yeah, Ferguson, Eugene Ferguson, Gerald Ferguson, was one of the first black officers that had the biggest funeral procession. Police came from all over when he was murdered. Out of all of the stories in these and how they transition, the one that strikes me the most is Millage, John Millage and his story. Now, I'm not going to tell you the story because I want you to come in and actually learn about the story.
Exactly.
But it's very interesting how Millage's murderer or killer was a 17 or 16-year-old boy who then, black at the time, who all of this happened over by Dorsey Park, which is another historic location where the black Negro baseball players used to play. And the story behind this and what the resolve of this, because they did eventually catch the killer of Millage, but just how that ended up being reconciled is fascinating to me, and the people who would have been on the other end of protecting Millage now were on the end of protecting the person who committed the crime. Mm-hmm. And I will say this because we're on Love Speaks. The person who did the killing went and changed their life around and was doing all these magnificent things in the community and serving. And they didn't continue to do crime. So when they brought them back, extradited them back to Miami, they didn't end up serving any time because of all the good they had done from the time they were 17 until, and it was multiple decades. It's like they were 50 by the time they brought them back to Miami.
Wow.
So it's unique in this story. But all of these things are our stories. And by knowing them, I think we move better in the community. We respect, more. I think we respect officers.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to bring back, so my biggest project right now, before I say, okay, I'm ready to, pass it on to the next, is to create a space where officer friendly comes back. If we're going to have black people in these uniforms, I need people to know that people are human.
Yes.
And I need, I've learned, I also need those black people who are in these uniforms that no wrong is being done to speak up and be protected and speak out, so that they don't continue to kill unjustly, or go beyond what their badge requires them to do in order to protect and serve.
Exactly. I really appreciate your time. It sends chills through my body just to know that if my mother had lived, next year she would be 70 years old. And when she was born in 1956, police officers did not even have formal training. Mm-hmm. So we're not dealing with that long ago.
Yep.
We're not dealing with that long ago, which shows us that we still have a good way to go when it comes down to equality. I think, and I hate to say the word, but racism just wears a different mask nowadays.
It does.
But it still very much exists. But yet, even as African Americans, black people, Bahamians, Haitians, Jamaicans, even some of our Hispanic brothers and sisters, we still can be proud of our history to know we still survive.
Yes.
We still survive. And we're needed. We're needed on every end. Mm-hmm. We're needed as lawyers. We're needed as judges. We're needed as police officers. We're needed even as public service aides.
Yep.
We are needed because we know how to better govern our own community.
Yes. Yeah.
We know how to look at a situation and assess. Girl, you just got attitude. Mm-hmm. Kill that real quick, please. Yeah. And know how to deal with that. Yeah. And so I commend you for the work you're doing. You're doing a phenomenal job.
I'm trying.
We're friends. We've known each other for a long time.
Very.
But I am so extremely proud of what you're doing, which is adding wisdom and knowledge and passing on, I would call generational wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad that you all have chosen to use your time and your platform to elevate conversations that are not just from the pulpit. Love does speak, and it speaks now, and it speaks to the current, and this is an aspect. This is a act of love right here in this moment. So thank you.
Well, that about wraps it up for Love Speaks. If you're visiting the South Florida area, if you live in the South Florida area, this is a must stop. Stop by the Black Police Museum and Courthouse right over here in Overtown. You will be full and enriched of great knowledge that you can walk away with great pride of, and it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. This is a part of America's history. This is the only one in the entire United States of America. Love Speaks is what love is. Love is culturally, love is spiritually, love is connective, and love is current. And so we're so grateful to have you here. So do us a favor, like, share, subscribe on whatever platform that you have, and hit the notification button so every time that we come on, you know, hey, we are here. Every week we're releasing a new episode of great information, and we want you to be a part of it. We do all this with you in mind.